Hello everyone, welcome to my channel Nimisha Audiobooks. Shreemad Bhagwad Geeta, Chapter 1 Meaning. War is nothing new to this world. Thousands of years ago, wars were being fought, such as that one at Kurukshetra, to resolve the differences between good and evil and for the purpose of material gain. From ancient times to our modern era, practically not a day on this earth has passed when someone, somewhere, was not fighting over something. Throughout history, men have gathered on the field of battle to fulfill their greed for wealth and glory. Sometimes nobly, but more often ignobly. The same is happening in the 21st century. War, it seems, is an unavoidable karmic destiny of human civilization. Peace, on the other hand, is rather elusive. Peace is talked about even and prayed for, but seldom makes more than a momentary appearance. Most of our lives, even for the humblest of souls, are spent struggling for existence, either socially, politically, financially, mentally, or physically. For most of us, the temporary absence of any major crisis is what we would call peace. However, peace or Shanti, as it is known amongst yogis, is a state of consciousness and not a condition relative to the external affairs of the material world. Peace is an internal experience. The wisdom of the Vedic literature, Shrimad Bhagwatam, says, Jivo Jivasya Jivanin. One living being is food for another living being. From the minutest forms of life to the most complex, one life is sustained by the loss of another. Thus, the basic principle for material existence is fundamentally flawed with violence. Peace, then, for most of us, comes in doing what we have to do and believing that we have done the right thing. Therein lies the fine line between war and peace. Is what we think to be good or what we are conditioned to believe actually right? The ability to discriminate between right and wrong, or in some cases good and evil, largely depends on the extent of knowledge from which we draw our conclusions. A poor fund of knowledge naturally results in faulty conclusions. Therefore, it is in our best interest to seek out the greatest source of knowledge of the absolute truth, and familiarize ourselves with that. Bhagwad Geeta is perhaps the most widely read book of theistic knowledge in the world. Whatever knowledge one finds in a similar book such as Dhammapada, the Bible, the Torah, the Quran, etc. is also found in Bhagwad Geeta. But in the Bhagwad Geeta, one will find knowledge that is not present anywhere else. Consequently, the Bhagwad Geeta surpasses all branches of knowledge. What lies ahead in these commentaries is a look into the vastness of the knowledge of absolute truth contained in the Bhagwad Geeta. At the outset of the Kurukshetra war, Duryodhan made the classic military blunder of underestimating the strength of his adversary, possibly blinded by his greed for the kingdom or by his long-standing hatred for his cousins, the Pandavas. He entered the engagement thinking that his enemy's strength was limited. Hate and greed are certainly poor allies of judgment, usually resulting in wrong decision and the senseless loss of life. No better examples in modern times need to be cited that of the wars in Vietnam, Iraq, and Afghanistan, wherein underestimating the will of a people has led to the loss of millions of innocent lives. The classic commentators on Bhagwad Geeta have all pointed out that the blunder of Duryodhan at Kurukshetra, particularly it has been mentioned that Duryodhan failed to recognize that one Sri Krishna, the Supreme Person, was there to advise Arjun that Arjun would be a most formidable opponent. History has shown us that wars are fought out of greed, hatred, or religious prejudice. It is simply a convenience to think that God is on our side. The idea that God is on our side is certainly a comforting thought that has accompanied men into almost every war that we know of since the rise of Abrahamic religions. However, the problem has always been that in all these conflicts, both sides assumed the banner of righteousness, declaring God wills it. This is sometimes called the theology of convenience. Even today, it makes good to stir up the troops or rally the suicide bombers to their deaths by declaring that God favors our cause. It is a fact that during these dark periods of history, more people have died and more innocent people put to death in the name of God than by any other single unnatural cause. Many people consider despotic political regimes as the ultimate umpires of cruelty, but the truth is that religious fanatism has brought far more unnecessary death to the world than any political system of government. So, what makes the war at Kurukshetra any different that modern wars fought for greed or between religious fanatics? It is not simply Jingoism to say that because Sri Krishna, the Supreme Person, was on the side of Pandava, that they were correct in destroying their enemies. The difference is that Kurukshetra was not fought because one side had a different religious ideology than the other. Kurukshetra was a fratricidal war, a family feud brought on by the human faults, greed for sovereignty, failure in duty, envy, family attachment, and falsely identifying the body as the self. But unlike any other war in the history, Kurukshetra would record a profound lesson for the benefit of all future generations. The lesson was taught by Sri Krishna in the form of Bhagwad Geeta, a lesson that would enable humanity to overcome its mundane shortcomings, become established in transcendence, and attain self-realization. Sri Krishna is known as Parthasarthi, the chariot driver of Arjun. Because Krishna was Arjun's friend and companion, he requested Krishna to draw his chariot between the two armies so that he could see with whom he was to do the battle. But upon seeing the enemy before him, Arjun was shocked and fell into a state of bewilderment. Now, the stage at Kurukshetra was set so that Sri Krishna could speak Bhagavad Gita. Arjun became overwhelmed with the grief and gave up his duty. As a warrior, Arjun was duty bound to fight, but seeing the ordeal that lay ahead, he could not proceed. The world is certainly full of faults, dangers, unfortunate events, cruel and hateful designs to exploit others, and a host of other qualities that one would certainly describe as evil. To quote Edmund Burke, the Irish statesman and philosopher, the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good men to stand by and do nothing. Arjun had resolved his mind not to fight, knowing that destruction of the dynasty meant the loss of tradition, the onslaught of degradation, the birth of unwanted children, etc. And thus, evil would be the only outcome. Arjun also understood deep within himself that to do nothing also assured grim repercussions. Figuratively speaking, we would say that Arjun was caught between a hard spot and a rock. Therefore, Arjun intelligently approached Sri Krishna and appealed for his intervention. Knowing that Sri Krishna was the absolute truth, complete with all opulence and his knowledge, Arjun approached Sri Krishna, addressing him as Rishikesha, master of the sense, as Achyuta, the infallible, as Kesava, the killer of the Kesi demon, as Govinda, one who pleases the sense, as Madhusudan, the killer of the Madhu demon, as Janardhan, the maintainer of all living beings, as Madhava, the husband of the goddess of fortune, and as Varsneya, the descendant of the Varsni dynasty. Arjun addressed Sri Krishna by his different names in order to invoke Krishna's mercy and compassion for the predicament that Arjun was in. As Lord Krishna is the master of the mind and senses, thus he is never bewildered or put into illusion. As Achyutya, he is incapable of making mistakes or wrong decisions. Arjun needed Krishna's advice urgently, advice that he could depend on, that would give relief to his disturbed mind and senses. As Kesava, Krishna is the killer of demon Kesi, who represents the false sense of greatness. Sri Krishna is known to have killed numerous demons during his advent, and each of those demons represented negative qualities that hinder one's progress in spiritual life, such as the desire for name and fame, dishonesty, false pride, deceitfulness, cruelty, foolishness, violence, lust, anger, greed, false teachings, and bad habits, etc. Arjun was confident that by taking shelter of Sri Krishna, all that was impediment to his situation would be removed. By addressing Krishna as the descendant of the Varsni dynasty, Arjun was also reminding Krishna of the importance of family traditions, and destroy them was Arjuna's biggest dilemma. Thank you.